How would you say these policy briefs are helping members of parliament to formulate bills that reflect the will of the people?
When you're looking at policy implications, and when you're looking at policy recommendations, you're looking at a wide spectrum about some very concrete deliverables that you should be able to achieve. Yes. Members of parliament come through with legislation. This legislation is informed by what is happening and by the issues. As you know, most political parties are always in touch with the grassroots, so you can actually see what is happening to and fro. But you've got to be able to infuse these issues into legislation itself in a very concise manner. When it comes to the issue of implementation, that is handled by various government policies and government bodies, including, for example, the ministries and others. So it becomes a broad spectrum issue. But, for example, if you're looking at examples of, for example, policy recommendations on issues like, for example, value addition. How do you add value to a product? How do you ensure that the avocado that we export is not exported just as an avocado, but it is exported in all its variants, including value addition, for example, avocado oil? Put that out for exportation, and therefore that will infuse on legislation, so that in terms of your legislation, you're giving mandate to various stakeholders and bodies, including the ministries, to enact such a thing. If you're looking at issues, for example, of value chains or open market policies, how do we improve the markets? How do we make more people know about the markets? How do we improve, for example, technology? How do we ensure that what is happening in one corner of the world can actually be quickly taken to another corner of the world, so that we can use, for example, internet, we can use interconnectivity, we can be able to tell what the weather patterns are, what to do at a particular time, what is the new thing, what are the new investments that people are making.
From what you're saying, there's some sense of capacity building in all this.
There's a sense of capacity building, but it has to be infused in the mechanism and how to do it. So it becomes very important for political parties to be able to spin this out, to be able to point this out directly. And as you might know, within the coalitions, both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, we've had interactions with the International Republican Institute, who have been basically across the various coalitions key in ensuring that we begin to bring these manifestos, ideas, and everything we want to do in a very concise way. When you have a policy brief, it's just a guide. But that policy brief will contain, for example, issues like job-driven policies. How do we get policies that are going to drive the market? How are we going to get, as you know, one of the issues that has come up very recently is the issue of unemployment. And we're talking about an explosion of almost at 70% youth who are really looking forward to working, and they're looking for jobs. How do you infuse that in legislation? For example, just as an example, I was a legislator in the previous, both 11th parliaments and 12th parliaments. I came with a number of various bills, the natural resources bill, the cooperative bill. So at what point do you infuse? So, for example, if you're looking for how to ensure that within the counties there's a rollover effect, you've got to make sure you put it in the legislation. You've got to make sure you ensure that funds will be created for that. For example, if you're talking about people within the counties being able to take care of their raw minerals or use them, you've got to create the capacity at the ministerial level and at the county level to ensure those funds run out. And I'm sure you must have had this whole issue about the money bill. The money bills, this is a money bill, so therefore this is a bill that concerns money and therefore has to go through finance ministry, and this is not a money bill, it concerns counties. How do we harness our legislation within the counties so that these counties can say, for example, it's important to put this amount of money, for example, for ECDs, because that is the mandate of county governments. How do we put aside this money for hospitals? How do we put aside this money that can be able to enhance technological advancement if you're talking about agriculture? How are we going to be able to ensure that the hubs work well? How are we going to be able to ensure that our children get employment? What must we do? So once you be able to configure that way, you're tying in both legislative agenda, and that legislative agenda should be very key about the resources and what should happen. I'll give you an example, which I like to give, and this is in the field of education. So you're saying, for example, there's a misfit between the young people who come out, the training, and what the industry wants. So maybe the industry is aiming towards ICT, maybe the industry is aiming towards getting us to be self-employed, maybe it's moving towards ensuring that we're able to get out there with skills. How do we harness these skills? So you might say, to harness these skills, let's loop the educational sector with industry. Let us have, for example, internships. Let these people come. Let these people use the new machines. You see, that's where legislation now has to come in. So it's a lot of stuff going in there. It's both the legislation, it is the goodwill, it is the financial component. And that's where we come in as political parties to say that these key issues are important for our people. If our people are to get employment, which is critical, if the cost of living has to come down, if we have to address all these issues, then we must be able to find a way to create that interconnectivity.